You all to the block 4 of international marketing, which is international marketing planning. So we'll be dealing with the unit 12, international marketing research. So briefly, if you say, that is already we have discussed regarding the marketing mix approaches, which includes product price, place and promotions, and also we have talked about the different that is organizations are there who regulates or formulate the policies. Also we have talked about the different activities undertaken during the international marketing. But question arises, can you remain relevant? Can your marketing will remain relevant, or can you remain sustainable if you do not understand the market dynamics, which is beyond your control? So that is why to have to minimize the uncertainty, because if you talk about the international market, we are coming across with a term like VUCA, volatility, uncertain, complexity and ambiguity. So when you talk about the VUCA world, when there is a lot of volatility in the market, there is a lot of uncertainty in the market, there is a lot of complexity and the ambiguity in the market. How can you have a better strategy to deal with the international business? Also, in the meantime, we have to think about how my strategy will align with the market dynamics. For that reason, you have to go for the market research. Market research will give you a lot of upper hand to deal with a particular market. Because if you let us talk about some aspects, see, even if you do not understand the local markets, local dynamics, so can you launch some flavors? No. So that is why already I have cited you examples like companies like McDonald, Burger King, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, international companies. They try to understand the Indian market. They try to go for the market research. They understand the market dynamics. Then they launch their product. That is why they are successful. If you do not understand market dynamics, and if you launch some products which are standardized, then exactly the chances of success is very minimal. So to have a control over the international market, you have to go for the market research. Because already you talk about that, when you are going for the market research, you are going for the expansions, you are coming across the data, informations, that the condition necessary for business intelligence. You need data and informations when you are expanding your business to the international markets. So to have data and information, you have to go for the market research. Maybe you can conduct your own market research, or you can take the help of agencies like KPMG, Deloitte, other national agencies and national companies who have already knowledge about the national market. They will provide you the information. That is why we have to go for the we have to require data and information. Second, also, that is to explore the prospects for integrating better coordinations in the global markets, launch of new global brands, establish successful global branding strategy. Research that crosses national ground is becoming more and more important. That is why when you are going to launch a new product, or you are going for a new communication approach as far as marketing mix is concerned, you talk about the pricing aspect, whether the price is affordable by the customers, acceptable by the product is accepted by the customers. So that point you have to take into consideration. You have to have when you understand the market research. When you go for the market research, that is why market research is a significant aspect as far as international marketing is concerned. When you talk about the what are the importance of the meaning and importance of market research exactly is collect data from different sources, analyze the data, and interpret the data and come with a conclusion. That is the basic definitions we talk about as far as market research is concerned. But still, when you're looking for an opportunity in the global market, the uncertainty arises due to the main factors. So factor of lack of knowledge, already we have talked about that. New market alternative, the internal, external, the firm that is determine the consequence on new alternatives. So you do not have knowledge about the new markets, you also cannot have, how can you exactly can align the opportunities along with the resources you have. Then the whole process is requires you have to have a understanding of the market research. So that is why we are going for the market research. So that is why market research is nothing but the collecting formal process of collecting information, analyzing the results, and communicating the finding their implication in terms of the marketing actions. So already you are collecting data from the end users, where the end user is here the customer, your consumers, you are collecting data from them. Then you are analyzing the data, and exactly you are going for the interpretation of the data. So now data has become the new norm. That is new advantage with the company is the data. If you have the data, then you can enter or you can sustain business in the other markets. The American Marketing Association defines market research the function that links the consumer, customer, and the public to the marketer through information. Already we have talked about that. That is market research exactly connects the customers, consumers, and the public to the market through informations. Information used to identify, define opportunities, problems, generate, refine, evaluate actions, monitor performance, and improve understanding of its process. Exactly that you talk about. That basically, if you briefly, if you say what is market research is all about, market research is the process of collecting information, formulating objectives, collecting informations, then analyzing the results, communicating the finding, their implication in terms of marketing actions. That is all about the marketing research. So marketing research, if you see the the scenario as far as global market is concerned, the market research is growing very fast. Because of why? Because of the inclusion of IT. IT has enabled the companies to get access of so many informations, so many data, but whether all the data are relevant, all the data you require. So that is why you have to see that is the growth of market research. If you see 2015, that is exactly, and 2020, this 20 is around 70.4 billion US dollar. Just imagine the size of the market research. Now, the global market research services is expected to grow 4% annum. 4% on annum, that is 25 to 11,111.3 billion by 2030. Just see the importance of market research in the global market. The companies are putting a lot of money to understand the markets, to understand the consumers, how do they behave, where do they purchase, what does they purchase, when do they purchase. All talking about the WH factors. So that is exactly the companies, and the if you talk about the scenario, global market scenario, it is very lucrative one. The market is around 111.3 billion is expected to reach by 2030. So that is the kind of market we have. Market research services industry growth is expected to increase steadily in both developed and developing countries, not only limited to developed countries. Developing countries also putting a lot of money as far as market research is concerned. They also wanted to have their upper hand, because if you have the data, you have the information, then you can have the upper hand. That is the only area where you can have a sustainable competitive advantage. In terms of technology, the market research analysis service sector is leading the way with artificial intelligence, machine learning. The way companies they are working on this, that is we talk about the market size is lucrative, and it is also expected to grow, that is 4% per annum. That is why as a marketer, as a businessman, we are dealing with the international markets, we have to understand the market research. When you talk about the scope of international marketing research, it is not limited to domestic countries. When you talk about the domestic countries, they do have the knowledge, or their market is limited to the domestic market. So that is why the research, because they have already knowledge, they already know about the market. That is why little research is required. But still, they also wanted to also have to take the help of market research, because now the market is open. Any company operating any part of the market that is also facing the challenges from both local, national players, from the international players. So that is why you have to have understanding the market research. The market research includes socio-economic and political profile of the country, size and trend of the market, nature of the competitions, rules and regulations. The four aspect we talk about, if you understand the four aspect, then you can have a market orientation approach. The market orientation approach takes into account the trends of the market, competition, and what consumer is looking for. Here also we talk about the socio-economic profile, that is all about the consumers. What about the size trend of the market, the trend of the market, and nature of the company, whether it is market is occupied or captured by 2 to 3 players, major players, or it is it is a healthy competitions. Exactly, that is all included in the scope of international marketing research. When you talk about the socio-economic and political profile of the country, we talk about information under this category includes a wide variety of data factors like size of the populations. What about why most of the countries now see government, Modi government is able to challenge Trump? That's because of the tariff. Because why? Because we have a market, and that is what we have the upper hand as compared to others. So that is America knows that, or China knows, everybody knows that India has a bigger market, and we do have three, we have a consumption capacity. So we need not to be depend on the other countries as far as consumption is concerned, because already we have our own consumptions. So that is the size of the market, national income, principal sources per capita income, standard of living, capital attributes, all comes under the, that is in the socio-economic and political profile of the country. If you are including the people who are residing, what about their profile, what about the standard of living. So that is, if you see the Indian market, what exactly we talk about 3C. The Indian consumer is looking for change, they do have consumption capacity, they have become confident as compared to the predecessors. So the 3C we talked about, that is looking for change, they are becoming more brand conscious. That is why the other countries it is becoming a lucrative market, because you are dealing with a market of 150 160 billion people. So that is why we talk about the socio-economic, that is the mostly the status, social status, the spending capacity that signifies for the socio-economic and political profiles. Size and trend of the market, when you talk about the size of the trend of the market, we have to understand who are the, that is the data of indigenous productions, products mix, export, import sources, size and trend of foreign trade, the proportion of national consumptions of the products supplied by the domestic entities. So exactly, you talk about mostly we are depending on the what, we are depending on the imports. Export import is more as compared to export. That is why we are depending other countries as far as that is why government has started a program Make in India. Why? Now you can have your own uh, production here, and people will be getting job. You are using our resources. Meantime, you are investing a lot. So that is exactly the, we talk about the size and trend of the market. Whether the size and trend of the market is dominated by few players, or it is dominated by exactly what about the policy, what about the foreign trades, what about import and export. That all comes under the size and trend of the market. Nature of the competitions. So you talk about the nature of the competitions, we talk about where do we, yeah, exactly the competitive positions. We talk about the market leader, who are the market leader, what is the market share, what is the competitor share of the market. Is market dominated by small group of large scale suppliers or large number of small suppliers? So exactly, if you talk about the retail industry, if you talk about the retail industry, the companies like Walmart, Tesco, Carrefour, they wanted to enter into the Indian market. Why? Because they see the market is high or mostly dominated by unorganized sectors. 85% of the market is dominated by unorganized, 15% is organized. But people are looking for affordable shopping, people are looking for a new avenue for shopping, they are looking for entertainment as far as shopping is concerned. So when there is a change, people are looking for a change, and there is not, exactly not tapped by the local players. That is why the Tesco, Airport, like international giants, they wanted to enter because the market is totally dominated by unorganized sector. So is the market dominated by small group? Yes, small group of large scale suppliers. What are the marketing strategy of the competitors, including their product range, pricing strategy, distributions? That is promotional techniques. You have to understand that aspect also. What about the infrastructures and institutional facilities available? The market, whether the market is scattered one, unorganized, the government is has a control over the price, or government is not taking any control over the price. So all the factors that comes under the that is the nature of competitions. What are the commercial business practices, norms and ethical standards? That all comes under the nature of the competitions. That they will give you an idea about the kind of competition that is prevailing in the particular country. Then the next one is rules and regulations. The rules and regulation, because government is the first interface. If you wanted to take any decisions, the government has to, you have to take the permission from the government. You do not take permission from the government, that is why you cannot do business in the countries like India. The government is always in the upper side, safe side. So that is why the rules governing the entry conditions of foreign goods into the country, rules governing internal business practices, you have to understand both the practices. Whether government has a favorable policy, favorable rules and regulation for foreign companies, or they do not want to enter to the foreign companies. So here, that is exactly you have to understand. All countries regulate the import of foreign goods by various means such as imposition of complete ban, quantitative quota, tariffs, tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers, currency license restrictions. So that is all the rules and regulations formulated by the government. That is why the four things you have to understand is: one is socio-economic and political profile, size and trend of the market, then is your nature of competitions, and also rules and regulations. That will give you a brief detail exactly what is the government, what is the country is looking for. So that exactly gives a brief. So when you talk about the socio-economic political profile of the country, it includes population size, growth, composition, gross national product, per capita income, balance of payment, industrial structure, cultural attributes, climate conditions, and political systems. What about our climate conditions? So if you are a company like Hitachi, or you are an international Japanese company, you wanted to, because you have to understand the climate, because here the climate is all about, that is 80 most of the seasons is dominated by summer. 8 months belongs to summer, 4 months belongs to rainy and winter. So that is why when you are planning to launch a new AC, so exactly what climatic conditions people are looking for. So mostly it is humidity and high temperature. That is why the climatic condition is always hot. Political systems, who takes the decisions? So whether the state government is taking decisions or national government is taking decisions, that exactly you have to understand that. Then we talk about the size and trend of the market, the indigenous production, volume and growth, direction and composition of foreign trade, consumption patterns and trends in marketing planning, market segmentation, market pattern, demand trends. So here it will give you an idea of exactly how you'll be segmenting the market, or you'll be targeting the market and positioning the market. That gives you the directions and of foreign trades. Because when it is foreign company, most of the Indians they prefer foreign brands because of why? Because of the it's we have a love for foreign brands, because that gives you a lot of psychological benefits. So that is we talk about whether you'll be, as far the segmentation is concerned, whether you'll be going with the same traditional demographic, psychographic, behavioral or geographic segmentations, or when you are dealing with the other countries, any other new way of segmentation is required. That is exactly you have to think about that. Structure of the competition, direct indirect competition, nature of competition, competitive share of the, what is competitive positions we talk about. When you talk about the competitive positions, that is exactly we have talked about the market leader, market challenger, market follower, and market niche. Whether you are a market follower or you are a challenger or you are a niche. So if you are a foreign company, if you are becoming a niche, that is why your markets remain specific. Your market is not large, your market remains specific. But when you are planning to go for a broad market, are you targeting a narrow market or a broad market? If you are targeting a narrow market, what happens? Your approach mostly is focused. But when you are targeting a broad market, your market is diverse one. So exactly you have to understand the competitive positions, structure of competitions, marketing strategies, competitive marketing strategy, business and commercial practices, trademarks and patents. Whether you require patent when you want launching a new product in the market, that all points comes in the structure of the competitions. Then you talk about the rules and regulations, the market entry regulations. You talk about the Potter's 5 block model. Before you enter into any market, there is a model called Potter's 5 forces, which deals with there are 5 forces which are operating in a particular industry. That the forces are threat of new entrant, bargaining power of the buyer, bargaining power of the seller, bargaining power of the substitutes, and rivalry among the existing firms. So once you understand whether for a new entrant whether there is any rules and regulations, is there any entry threat? If there is no entry threat, then exactly you can enter into the market and do. As far as Indian market is concerned, Indian rules and regulations are concerned, that is you can, it is very difficult to get entry. It is very difficult to get an entry, but once you get an entry, then nobody tell you exit. But what about China? You can get an entry also. Anytime they will throw you out of the country. There is no. But India, once you get an entry, very difficult to you will get an exit. So that is the difference between the different countries. So next is you talk about the international marketing research process. Once you understand what are the factors that is influencing, how we discussed about how market research is important for any organization, because mostly the organization dealing with uncertainties, volatility, ambiguity and complexity. So that is why you need data and information. Second point we talk about, that is you have to understand the 4 aspects such as the socio-economic aspect, political profile. Then you have to understand size and trend of the market, structure of the competitions and rules and regulations. That exactly you have to understand that. Next we talk about the market research process. When you talk about the market research process, the market research starts with the problem identifications. What is the problem? Then we talk about the statement of the research objective, planning a research design, planning a sample, collecting data, analyzing data, formulating conclusion, preparing and presentation of reports. That is already that is we have already discussed about that. When you are talking about the defining a problem, the problem may be different for different countries. When you talk about that is the problem, like suppose you are selling milk products, that is to the Indian market, the situation is different. When you are selling milk product to the UK, they are different. In the other countries, it is different. So exactly the research process beginning with the definition of the problem is crucial for global market research in particular, because defining problems is in an unfamiliar environment, because you are not familiar with the environment, but still you are defining the problem. So sometimes researchers either fail to recognize self-reference criteria or evaluate the problem descriptor as it were their own environment. They fail to analyze. If you take the framework from what is prevailing in your own country, then exactly the case I cited here is what, like UK, they used to take milk before they go to the bed, but in Switzerland they take the milk in the morning hour. But as far as India is concerned, we take in the evening. So, but USA that is not, they do not take milk. So if you analyze the points what is prevailing there itself, that will give you the best solutions instead of analyzing from your point of view. That is known as the research. Statement of research objectives, that is after clarifying identifying the research problems, the researcher must make a formal statement of research objective. Your objective has to be very specific objectives. Exactly, your objective has to be smart enough. Specific. M stands for measurable, A stands for actionable, R stands for reasonable, and time bound. You cannot do a research for a, as far as your wish is concerned. No, because what happens if you go for a analyzing a problem from, it takes long time, long hours. What happens? Maybe what you are looking for that has changed during the course of the research. That is why if you are taking a time, your objective is very specific, then easily you are getting the solutions of that. So here we talk about the research objects may be stated in quantitative or qualitative terms. In quantitative or qualitative. Explain research question statement hypothesis also. That is when you talk about the objective, also you have to take into some formulate some hypothesis. Hypothesis supported by objectives. Objective and hypothesis. The hypothesis will be validated once you are collecting the data. That is the process. Hypothesis, on the other hand, is a statement that can be rejected or supported by empirical findings. That is the data. You can reject the hypothesis or accept the hypothesis with the data once you collect the data. That is the process, this statement of research objectives. When you talk about the planning design, where the design is talk about the blueprint of the research. What kind of, are you going for a descriptive research or exploratory research or causal research? What is your design, research design? That will decide. Suppose you are going for a explore, then exactly you have to identify what are the new areas, what are the new scopes are there. So if you are going for causal, the difference is how monsoon is affecting cultivation, that can be causal research. But when you are going for the analyzing the profile of the residents, that is the descriptive one. The research design is a blueprint or framework usually that is put, that is framework for the research plan of action, that is known as the research design. The researcher must at this stage also determine the type of sources of information needed. That is, are you going for survey methods or interview methods? If you are going for the survey methods, then exactly your sampling methods and time, possibly cost of the research will be different. But if you are going for the interview method, the cost involved, everything involved, that is also different. That is why we have to see what kind of market research design we are going for. Planning the sample, that is exactly you cannot collect data from all the populations. You have to take a sample. That is exactly out of the total populations, you have to define your sample and your sample size. Suppose you wanted to target to whole India, so your representation must be from all states, not from only one state. If representation from all states, then it will become easier to get the right data. Otherwise, it will become, you will be getting data which is not required. So, if you are interested in finding association with saving and loans, you may survey the people who already have accounts, or selected samples will not represent the potential customers. So, you have to be very particular as far as sample is concerned. Who will be my target audience? Where we will be collecting the data. The data collection is once you formulate the design, or you have decided the sample size, then you are going for the data collections. Data can be collected from different sources, primary sources or secondary sources. When you are collecting data, directly reaching out to the customers and providing them questionnaire, or you take interviews and collect data, that is known as the primary source. But when you are collecting data from the secondary source, like you are collecting already published data, then that is known as the secondary data. Secondary have already been published, collected for purpose other than specific research needs. Secondary can be further classified into internal or external. Data available within the organization as a byproduct of marketing information systems, or the routine reporting system is called internal data. So you can collect data from two sources. One is primary, another is secondary. If you are getting data from the customers directly, then it is known as primary. If you are getting data from the published sources, then it is known as secondary one. So once the data is collected, then you are going for the data processing and analysis. So to interpret what the data is all about, you have to analyze the data. And data has been collected, it has to be converted to a format that will provide the answers to the problem identified. Data processing begins with editing, coding, transcriptions, verification, editing involves. That is, once the data is collected, that you will be analyzing the data and you try to identify whether there is any inconsistency in the data or there is a consistency in the data. So in international marketplace, it is unwise to take information at face value. Research result might be skewed by word meanings. So that is why you have to directly reach to the customers and take data. That is, you talk about the data processing and analysis. Then we talk about the once you have the data, when you are collecting data, then you are processing the data and analyzing the data, you are going for the interpretation of the data. Interpretation of the data, once data will be interpreted, then exactly you are going for recommendations or conclusions. That is the process of market research. So the basic format here is, the format is title of the page, table of the content, list of statistical tables or list of figures, executive summaries, introduction, literature review, research methodology, analysis, interpretation of data, summary of findings, conclusion and recommendations. Or if you have any appendix, then exactly finally we are going for this top reference. This is the standard format for preparing the research report. If you are collecting the data and you have all the analyzing the data along with different tools, then you have to go for the preparation of the report. The report includes the following points. That is the standard format available for as far as the research is concerned. When you talk about the techniques for international marketing research, what are the techniques available? The techniques may be desk research. What is exactly desk research? Desk research is nothing but you are not moving anywhere. You are collecting this that is data from already the available sources. That is, we talk about the sources. What are the sources? Sources are government sources, semi-government sources, private sources, and international sources. But you are not moving, that is here and there. You are collecting data from the available sources. The available sources are government sources, semi-government, private, and international sources. Desk research basically involves the collection of the information from documentary sources, other published information. In other words, information data already exists. You are not going to collect any data as far as desk research is concerned. The government sources, there is government has so many reports. They bring some reports as far as which industry is doing better, which is industry is growing for the next 2 to 3 years. All data they publish. That is known as the government sources. That is the government, like an information provider. Government covers wide areas like populations, economy, policy documents, industries, institutions, rules and regulations. That is all published in the government. Government is also responsible to publish the sources. So you can get data from the government sources. Semi-government sources. Many countries they are popular semi-government agencies in charge with specific tasks as monitoring consumption trends, foreign trades. So that is the semi-government sources. Then we have private sources. Private also, like we have KPMG, we have Deloitte. They are companies. They work to collect data from the market. Also, they collect data from the different sources. They are research institutions, publishing houses, banking and financial chambers of commerce. They usually process and disseminate different kinds of information in their respective area of concern. Then last one, you talk about the international sources. The international source important source among these organizations: Food Agriculture Organizations, International Labour Organizations, United Nations Conference, IMF, OECD, and ITC. International Trade Center. They all publish their own documents. So once you are getting the document of all this, then exactly your research becomes robust. These are known as the desk research, which is mostly the research conducted on the desk. No need to go here and there, and you are collecting data which is available with the existing sources. That is known as the desk research. Limitations of desk research, exactly sitting on the AC chamber cannot, you cannot judge what exactly the people are looking for. Unless you go to the people, unless you talk to the people, unless you analyze what is the taste and preference, then you cannot exactly get. The data may have been collected, manipulated for a specific use, therefore it may be incomplete, ambiguous, out of context. Sometimes also data is old one. That is why that is one of the limitations of desk research. Data may be compiled in different ways in different countries, making comparability difficult. Data may be corrupted by methodological interpretation problems. You have made so many errors, typological error, definitional error, sampling error, sectional error. That is why there is the problem as far as desk research is concerned. Language, social location, trained workers, etc. Non-existence, unreliable. Data may be inflated, deflated by the political purpose. So that is even if you are going for the desk research, but problem exactly lies the data are not, you cannot exactly rely on these data. That is why you have to go for your own source of data, that is by directly interacting with the customers, taking their feedbacks, taking their reviews, then exactly that will become the best data as far as that is your research is concerned. You talk about the second, we talk about the survey research. When you talk about the survey research, that is exactly already we have talked about, that is you have to go for the primary research. Desk research is all about secondary research, but here in case of survey research is all about primary sources. So primary data is exactly going to the public, collecting data and analyzing the data, that all are known as the secondary, the primary sources. So most of the companies they go for primary sources because that is the real data, or you can work on, or you can rely. But secondary sources data, as far as your political concerns is concerned, political motives is concerned, they may manipulate the data and they bring something data which is not necessary. That is why companies rely mostly on the survey research or primary research. Primary distributed desk research and survey research, that data from desks are already available, whereas data for survey research are generated during the research. Very fresh data you will be getting as far as the survey research is concerned. Most of the desk research on foreign market can be done in exporters country itself, but survey research must be carried out with the potential markets abroad through direct contact with the people there. Where exactly we have talked about that this data is different and this research is different. What are the survey methods? The survey methods, exactly you can collect data from the customers by communicate by interviews. Interviews in marketing research are most common method of data collection. Interview may be structured questionnaire. You are providing a questionnaire, you are giving to the customers and encourage them to fill up the customer. Sometimes also we have some incentives to understand their behaviors. So involving use of structured formal questionnaire as well as interviews, that is known as a survey, that is structured and direct. Unstructured, not involving the use of pre-decided question, only the interviews. The personal interview is known as the unstructured and that is a direct methods. Structured and indirect, where the correspondence to a non-personal ambiguous data collection which is later interpreted. Projective techniques like word situations, perceptual mapping, that comes under the structured and indirect methods. Then unstructured and direct, where the respondent is asked to respond to non-personal ambiguous situations, but where the interviewer has the considerable degree of freedom in modifying alternative situations. So these are the some of the methods as far as survey research is concerned. Mostly that exactly you are reaching out to the customers You are taking their feedbacks, their views, opinions through structured questionnaire or interviews. That is, we talk about the survey research. So when survey research is concerned, it is more of authentic, more of reliable as compared to the that is the desk research. The observation methods, we talk about the observation. Another type of data collection method is the observations, which involves making recording of observations without engaging the subject of the study of the respondent. Sometimes it is less expensive, more accurate to be carefully monitor the. Only you are not collecting data, because when you are collecting data, maybe you are getting some biased opinions. That is why observation. You are standing in front of the shop, in front of crowded places, and observing the that is situations. What is the situation that is there? That is known as the observation method. Observation can be used both alone or in conjunction with other methods in data collection. It is quite often used to exploratory monetary research. When you wanted to explore something in the market, you are going for the observation method, exploratory one. That is, we talk about the observation methods. When you talk about the sources of error in primary data collections, what are the sources? Already we have talked about the sources. So sources are, that is when you are primary data sources collections, there is a problem of sampling errors. You are not getting the right sample. Your intention may be you are not going to the whole populations, you are going for a chunk of the populations. So you have to define the sampling. When you are defining the samplings, then exactly it becomes easier to get the data sampling error. Then you talk about the non-response error. There may be many people, they hesitate, they avoid to give the answers to any questions. So that is, we talk about non-response errors. They are not ready to give you the response, non-response error. Sometimes, even if they give response, like if you ask a question of 1 to 5, they will put 5 in each and each questions. Strongly disagree, strongly agree on every questions. That exactly shows there is a bias, response errors. So that is another problem with the primary data collections. Inaccurate information due to the investigator. Maybe they are not providing you the right data. So exactly you are looking for something, but they are providing something else. So that is another problem with the inaccurate information due to the investigators and ambiguity. The context wise, the same question may be interpreted differently to the different customers. There is ambiguity as far as the questionnaire is concerned. So certain things exactly we have to see when you are collecting the data as far as primary source is concerned. You have to see whether the sampling is done it properly, or we are getting any response as far as error is concerned, or as far as investigator is concerned. That is, you talk about the. Then also we see even if the question is everything, but still some questions they they have some ambiguity. That is why you have to clarify all the details before we go for the data collection as far as primary data is concerned. So let us discuss all the points again from beginning. So see, when you talk about the market research, already we talk about the market research. We talk about when you talk about the market research is important. It is requires a lot of efforts. Because of what? Now, because you do not have control over a market where you are planning to enter or you wanted to establish your presence. So that is why even if you see opportunities, there is so many uncertainty. So mostly to avoid uncertainty, you have to go for the market research. To have a better alignment of your objective and what the marketing requirements, you have to go for the market research. Market research is important because it gives you the base or foundation knowledge it gives. That is exactly what is the requirement of the market. That is why you will go for the market research. When you go for the market research is basically, already we have talked about that. Market research is basically collecting data, analyzing the data, interpreting the data. That is all involved in the market research. Also, in the meantime, Another we talk about when you talk about the market research. Market research is basically what it is a you try to link between the consumers, customers, and public to the market. That is one area market research, which is makes it is creates a linkage between the customers, consumers, public to the market. So there is a linkage. So it is the gap is minimized by market research. When you talk about the scope of marketing research, the global scenario, to talk about the global scenario, it is one industry. It is growing 4% per annum, expected to reach triple $1.3 billion by 2030. See the kind of requirement as far as international business is concerned, international research is concerned, the kind of data they require to enter with other countries. When you talk about the market research services industry is expected to grow steadily both developed and not only limited to developed countries or underdeveloped countries. It is both the countries they require data information because to have an upper hand to have the knowledge about other countries. Technology is also disrupting. That is why the introduction of AI, machine learning, that is also making most easier to get data from the customers. So that is why, as far as global scenario is concerned, the market research is one of the lucrative industry, growing 4% per annum, and it will reach 11 industry by 2030. That is all about the global scenario. When you talk about the scope of the international market research, the scope of international marketing research is you have to understand the socio-dynamic aspect, where you wanted to enter, whether the people are rich, poor, or they are not middle class people who do have the capacity to consume. Who is taking the decisions? Where do they purchase? How do they purchase? When does they purchase? And what do they purchase? So size of the trend of the market, nature of the competitions, and rules and regulations. That is, you have to understand that. When you talk about the socio-cultural aspect, socio-economic or political profile of the country, we say that is the national income, the principal sources of per capita income, standard of living, cultural attributes, that all comes under the socio-economic and political profiles. But when you talk about the size of and trend of the market, it include data, production data, product mix, which is in product mix is all about the portfolio. What is your portfolio you are going to offering? Export import data, that all data you'll be getting as far as the market research is concerned. That is, market research scope is not limited to only one aspect, socio-economic. It also has extended its presence to size and trend of the market. Then we are talking about the nature of competitions. You have to understand what is the competitor share of the market. Is the market dominated by small group of players? Already have cited you examples. Like Walmart, Tesco, when they wanted to enter to the Indian market, they wanted to understand whether the industry is dominated by unorganized player or organized players. If it is unorganized player, what is the structure? Whether they are have the right kind of marketing plan, product range, or pricing strategy and distribution channels. That is all you can get to know when you are going understanding the nature of the competitions. The last is not good. List is the rules and regulations. The rules and regulation, what is prevailing in the particular country, that decides whether government is taking all, because if you're talking about the India, most of the decisions are taken by the government. Government is the that is interface. Any decision you take, you have to consult with the government. The government is the interface. So that is where the rules and governing the country conditions of foreign goods into the country, rules governing internal business practices, all comes under the rules and regulations. All countries regulate the import of the foreign goods, various means such as imposition of complete ban, quota, on the tariff barriers. Now recently we talk about the tariff barriers. Trump is hiking, increasing the tariff of products that is imported from that is Indian. So that is now the discussion for the last 2 weeks. What does it mean? That means that is the rule regulation you are bringing current companies. That is exactly the companies has to keep an eye on this. That you talk about the rules and regulations. Then you talk about the what is includes the population size, growth compositions. What about the population size? The population is India is age between 25 to 35. They constitute around 50% of the population. It means India is a young economy, mostly young people are taking decisions, and then they have a consumption capacity. Three things you are getting to know as far as the population size, growth, and composition is concerned. What is gross national product? Talk about the Bangladesh GDP is growing 8% per annum. 9%. मतलब the country is steadily growing. Per capita income, balance of payment, industrial structures, whether large number of industries are there or very less number of industries are there in a particular, that is capital cultural attributes. India is very orthodox. Indians are orthodox as far as cultural attributes is concerned. South you cannot market their the products which they do not want because they do have their own belief and values. So that is why you have to understand the cultural attributes. That is why McDonald in the initial years they failed by because they launched beef in the market. So which is not accepted by our culture. So that is why people did not accept McDonald. McDonald failed in the initial years. Already I talked about that. Then later on when they realized Indians require products which are Indian specific, they become successful. The climatic conditions, already you talk about the climatic conditions like that if you are a automobile company, you are dealing with the hilling stations, the kind of tire will be different from plain roads. So it's all about the political, that is the climatic condition and political systems. Then you talk about the size and trend of the market, the volume growth, current competitions, competition current rate, competition patterns. That all comes because it will give you a point to segment the market to understand the what is the consumption pattern of the people. Are they consuming regularly or they are consuming once? Because you see the Indians mostly they consume during the festive seasons. Now, keeping in mind the companies are ready with their plans how to get the attention of the Indian customers during the festive season. Structure the competition already talk about that is what is the positions you wanted. If you are targeting a broad market or narrow market, if you are targeting broad market, then your approach will be different. If you are targeting narrow market, your approach will be different. Then rules and regulations, already we talk about that the rules and regulation that is prevailing, whether the government has a tough rule as far as international business is concerned. If the whatever government is putting a lot of barriers, trade barriers as far as tariff is concerned. So if all the things are concerned as far as the rules and regulation is concerned. Then we are talking about the process of market research, which is involves defining problems, statement of research objectives, planning the research design. Where you talk about you have to identify where is the problem, where is the gap, as far as the research is concerned. If the you people wanted a different things, people wanted a different solutions altogether. So exactly you have to identify the problems, statement of the research objectives. Then we talk about the research designing, which is a framework before you go for the research. Then we talk about the planning the sample out of the total populations. You have to decide which sample you are targeting. Then you are going for a data collection. Data collection can be done through primary sources and secondary sources. Primary sources is directly customers, and when you secondary, that is you are collecting the data which is available, existing data. Data processing and analysis, once you have the data, you are analyzing the data, whether there is a consistency or inconsistency as far as data is concerned. Then exactly you are going for the interpretation of the data. Then we talk about this is the format we talk about. Then we talk about the desk research. Desk research is all about that is when you are collecting data sitting on the desk, and that is which is available. The sources are government sources, semi-government sources, private sources, and international sources. So that is the area where you can get the data. But problem is exactly you do not directly contact with the customers. You know get the data what is happening, which is a fabricated one, is a manipulative one. That is why you cannot rely on the test cases. You have to go for the survey, which is a primary one, that is directly collecting data from the survey research. And also there is a process of interviews. You can go for the structured questionnaire, unstructured or direct indirect response, unstructured and indirect way you can collect data from the customers. And another method is known as observation method. You can observe the data, observe the things and also get the data. But problem with the primary source of data collection is all about error, sampling error, non-response error, inaccurate information and ambiguity. So this is we talk about the as far as market research is concerned. Very carefully, you have to design your plan and you have to make sure that you are getting the right data so that you can have the right action. With this, we are winding up this session for today. Thank you.